I've never had to talk about this before. So it's just weird. I mean, you have these conversations with your friends or your
Exactly.
family.
Exactly. It's just like,
Okay,
oh, we got to get to nitty gritty today. I was just
right.
talking to Charles. I said this was heavy on the heart, so it's just like we have to
Yeah.
adjust the situation.
It's actually, when I thought about it, I was like, you know what? This is actually a good conversation to have because
Mhm.
some people do not know how to deal with it. You go through it and then you just leave it alone. You figure out how to
Exactly.
deal with it, leave it alone. So, I was like, I've never been asked outwardly to talk about something like this. So it's just new.
I'm
Mr.
excited.
Ms. Duran, just to let you know, this is my third, maybe fourth program to
Okay.
talk about this.
This is
Because
my very first. This is my
yeah,
very first.
this summer it was very prevalent with a lot of different institutions, organizations. Yeah. So this
Yeah.
is like my third or fourth
And then
panel
yeah,
discussion.
yeah, this is so this I'm that's why I appreciate this opportunity for myself. And I went to a white school. I went to Fordham, right? So coming
Same
from
year, I went to PWI too. So
yeah,
yeah.
right. So when I came to Morgan, it was a different environment, different everything for me. Um, and actually just seeing this question, this what we're going to talk about, is like, wow, like it made me face it again, and like, oh, you know what? Maybe it's good, so I can share with people how I've managed to navigate that area of my life. So yeah, I think this was good. I appreciate being a part of this. So thank you.
Yeah, some folks that are excited as well. I see Miss Cradle, see her in the chat. Just saw the name. So yeah, really excited about this. So we're just going to go ahead and start since we already started. Yes, HR in the house. So feel free for the attendees to post questions in the chat. I'm
Okay.
going to start them off. I'm going to start our panelists off with some questions. First, I want them to introduce themselves. And then we'll just hop on in to the questions. So I'll start. My name is Ms. Rainicia Smith. I'm the lead career specialist for the UNC of Career Pathways Initiative here at Morgan State University. I serve the School of Social Work and also the School of Education and School of Education and Urban Studies. Can't speak today. So I'm glad to be here, and I've also invited my team as well, so they should be popping up at the attendees list as well, because this has been a conversation that we've been having again all summer and even a little bit before that since the George Floyd incident. So without further ado, I'll introduce Mr. Charles Jennings. Give a little bit of background.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited, honored, and privileged to be here. My name is Charles Jennings Jr. I currently serve as the Senior Associate Director of Employer Engagement and Outreach at Princeton University Center for Career Development. I've been here for a year and a half now. Before that, I was the Director of the Career Development Center at Tennessee State University, where I served for about 2.5 years. Still my heart is there, go Big Blue, still keep in contact with the wonderful students there. As I was telling Ms. Smith when we logged on, the current Mr. and Miss TSU are students that I knew as freshmen, and I am so looking forward to going back to their outside coordination in a couple of weeks. They invited me as a special guest, so have a love for my fellow Black students, students of color, love mentoring, things of that nature, and I'm so excited to be a part of this conversation today.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings.
And we have Morgan's own Miss Debbie Duran from HR.
Hi, everyone. I'm Debbie Duran. I'm currently the Assistant HR Director here at Morgan. Before that, I was the HR Director at Office of Administrative Hearing. Prior to that, I was the Human Resource Manager at one of the prisons out in Jessup. And I came into the state as a classification analyst at Department of Budget and Management. Before government, I was a recruitment manager. I'm from New York, so I was a recruitment manager for Cabrini Hospital in New York, and I was in benefits coordinator at an airline in New York. So accumulation of about 13 years of HR experiences. And just being invited to this panel to talk about my Blackness is really new for me. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about some of the things that I've been through to where I'm at today. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to jump right ahead to the questions. Again, feel free for the attendees to post your questions in the chat. I'll ask the panelists a little bit later. I just want to start them off. So first, I won't even say it's a question, it's kind of a statement. Would you please share like a personal story in which you face challenges based on the color of your skin? You want to go first?
Ms. Duran, you want to go first?
Well, I mean, I think, to be honest with you, Morgan is the blackest place I've ever worked in terms of work environment. So most of my environments, I've either been, since my college days, been the only black in my class or stuff like that, or my HR, just the job by itself, HR is predominantly white by nature. So I knew what I was getting into. I knew that I could have faced struggles because HR is normally predominantly white, especially in the private sector. But I was still willing to take that risk because I knew that I'm a fighter and I knew what I was bringing to the table. And I was not going to let my skin deter, my color or my race deter me from. And, you know, I'm a Jamaican immigrant as well. So I face sometimes two types of discrimination. I face discrimination being an immigrant, being a woman, and being Black. So I had battles to fight, but I think I had the tenacity and the fortitude to show them what I can do, opposed to tell them what I can do. And I think that I've overcome a lot. I've always been faced. I've always kind of come in every place as an underdog. So it's nothing outstanding. I've always felt it. But I think that too, I must say, I was hired by a lot of whites. So I wouldn't really say it's total discrimination. I think when they meet you and what they feel from you will let them hire. So I wouldn't necessarily say I faced a lot of discrimination because I already knew that I was going to, so I was ready to take it on. And I'll tell you later on how I took on something in specific.
Love it. Mr. Jennings?
So, Ms. Smith, let me just tell you how you have a bomb.com panel right now, because me and Ms. Duran come from two different backgrounds. So just to let you all know, before Princeton, every work environment that I was in was primarily Black. So when I worked my first job at Goodwill Industries out of college, primarily Black staff. From Goodwill Industries to Georgia Department of Labor, primarily Black staff. From Georgia Department of Labor to University of Baltimore, primarily Black staff. So I've dealt with that all the way up until I got to Princeton, but it doesn't mean that I did not face issues, because honestly, when you are in a primarily Black environment and you have non-Black coworkers, they do kind of feel like that you are favored, because they don't look at your qualifications. They look at the fact that you look like the person in charge, so you're favored, whatnot, in regards to why you get the promotions or you get the recognition that you get. But I will point out one specific situation that I encountered that was very based upon discrimination. So I made the decision back in 2013 to leave the Department of Labor to go into higher ed career services. And I started applying for several jobs at different institutions. And I made the decision, I'm gonna leave Georgia. So I had an interview at a huge institution that is a big mega institution in the South. Mega when it comes to football, everybody knows it. I don't want to put it out there, but it's a huge institution in the South. I will just say the state starts with the letter A. That's all I'm gonna tell you. So I had an interview at their business school career center office, and I think I have the name where people don't necessarily look at it and say, okay, this is a Black male. And at the time, you could tell that they did not go on LinkedIn to see what I look like. So the moment I walked into the door to get greeted by the director, if he tried to hide it on his face, he could not. He was very shocked to see that I was a Black man, and it was written all over his face. So The moment he took me to the room to be interviewed by the staff, as I walked and surveyed the center, there were white students sitting at the desk. As I walked into the room, everyone was white. And again, the same look that the director had on his face when he greeted me at the door, they had it on their face when I walked into the room. They couldn't erase it while I did my presentation. It was just a very bad interview day in regards to the lack of warmth that I received. Also, too, I would say that once I finished my presentation and I started getting questions, I would have to say, and I was younger then, and I'm not as pro-Black and I'm ready to fight you as I am now, but I will say that the way that the director asked me questions was a little, I would say, in the frame of being microaggressive. So, you know, looking back on it now, I didn't realize it then because this is 2013. But looking back on it now, the way I was approached, I knew when I left the experience that I was not going to get the job. It had nothing to do with my qualifications, but I just knew that they were not trying to hire Charles for that whatsoever. I think there was a break where they took me on a tour. They had one of the student workers take me on a tour, and as she took me around, hardly saw any faces of color within that career center or nearby. So it'd be interesting to see what's going on with the office now, but that's the biggest example of discrimination that I've ever dealt with within an interview or work setting, yes.
Mm. And I wanted to add something. As you're saying that, it brought something back to me, not from an interview perspective. When I was a class analyst at DBM, a part of my job was going out into the state to look at reclassifications, and I was on the team that did like the higher executives. So because of my name too, as Charles said that, that's why I was smiling. And, you know, according to some people, I sound like a white girl on the phone, you know? So with the name Debbie Duran, and, you know, when I'm talking to them initially, most people make the assumption that I'm white. So I remember I showed up for the interview to interview an executive. And when I got to the lobby, I said to the secretary, I'm here to interview Mr. So-and-so. So she looked in her book. She said, I don't have an interview scheduled for you. And I'm like, no, I said, I'm here to interview Mr. So-and-so. She looked again and she said, oh, I don't know if there's a mix up, because she's still hearing what she wants to hear. She's hearing that he has an interview with me. So I said, I'm going to say it again. I am here to interview him. He's not interviewing me. So she's like, oh. So she called somebody. And when the lady came down, opened the door to let me in, she said, I couldn't believe she said it. She said, you know, I thought you were Black. I thought you were white. And I'm like, unfortunately, I'm not. So in a sense, I faced that, but not so much an attack on my job, but in the interview process, when I was interviewing the person, they wanted to try to interview me, like ask me questions, but I'm trained to take hold of the interviews for classification. So they'll ask me stuff about my qualification. I said, this is not about me. She's like, oh, the person was like, oh, you don't know what I do. I control millions in budget and trying to like be a little condescending. So I said, here's the deal. So since you're not ready with your questions, I'll give you 2 weeks to think about them and write. No. So yes, that was a time that I faced it, not necessarily from an employment perspective, but for who is coming to them to talk to them about something that's going to give them more money. And not just, I faced it with that person, I faced it with the receptionist who was Black. And she was saying that, she was thinking, I'm saying that he's here to interview, I'm there to be interviewed by him. So yeah, my name has often throw a lot of people off as well, as Charles was saying. So, but it's a good thing. Actually,
I've actually faced the exact opposite with my name, so that's
Oh yeah.
I've actually even tried, I called it an experiment. There was a interview I had prior to Morgan, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna try something, because I was just like, my resume was decent. I said, let me try something with my name. So my middle name is funny because it is Morgan. So I said, let's do one of those R. Morgan Swift things and see where it goes. Next thing you know, I'm getting acceptance for an interview. I said, oh, there you are. So simple things like that. And then of course you see me, it's just like, oh, how do you pronounce your name? Oh, that's pretty, thank you. So Yeah, understood. But from the flip side, so
Okay,
I
okay.
understand that. You talked about code switching, Ms. Duran. And Charles talked about code switching. In the career sector, we're always talking about being professional and what does that look like for students and what have you. When it comes to, what are your views on code switching? When it comes to the fact that you feel like you are not being yourself, but then you have to be this professional type of person.
Charles, you
If
want to
that
go?
makes sense.
All right, me?
Gosh.
Oh,
So I'm gonna tell Renicia, I'm gonna tell Ms. Smith right now, because she knows me.
Mhm.
You're gonna have to keep me in line because I can get a little wild with some of these questions you're getting ready to ask. So let me go back to 2014 through 17 when I was at the University of Baltimore, and one of the biggest firms in Baltimore was interviewing our students. I'm not going to name any names again, but the initials are MS. So I'm going to just leave it at that. It's a financial wealth firm. So yeah, they were heavily wanting our students. So one of the students that worked in the Career Center, Baltimore born and raised and bred, but he also had the Baltimore dialect as well. And highly intelligent young man, loved him to death in regards to his thought process, got good grades, great student, but because of the dialect, and I remember to a T, if I'm not mistaken, the young lady who was interviewing him was also a Black female, and she came back and gave us feedback about how it was hard for her to understand him. And I remember having to have a conversation with him about code switching, because trying to share with him about how to get embraced. I'm not going to use the word accepted because honestly, I have a problem with that word now, and I have a problem with fit. I have a problem with fit, and and things of that nature. Yeah. So, but I had to talk to him about how to get embraced by the people at that firm, so that way he could get a position. That was back in 2015. It's 2020 now. I don't know if I'm gonna have those conversations right now because I'm in a different space than I was in 2015. So to sit down and tell students to change who they authentically are to be accepted, I have a big problem with that right now because honestly, I got to be honest with you. When I first started at Princeton, I was trying to be Charles. There's a difference between Charles and Chuck and CJ and all of that. There's a difference. So I was trying to be Charles, but that kind of went out the window, I'll be honest with you, to the point where I'm a lot more vocal and I'm a lot more, hey, I'm just going to be me, and you embrace it. Whether you like it or not, that's up to you. But all in all, I'm going to get the work done and whatnot, but understand that I'm still going to be authentically me. So that's how I feel about the whole code switching piece. Honestly, I know that when it comes to a lot of the work environments, they're not run by persons of color. They're not run by people that look like us. But honestly, especially now with a lot of organizations saying they're trying to diversify their talent pool, they're trying to diversify their workforce, the whole thing about environments and fit and culture, they need to re-examine that as we move forward as a nation trying to be more inclusive. I'm gonna shut up because Ms. Duran, I can get on a soapbox.
All right, so
that's why I told Ms. Smith to calm me down. So yeah.
I'm on the total opposite side of the spectrum from Charles on this. And let me tell you why. All right, so you look at me, right, in this jacket. I'm filled with tattoos. I have sleeves and everything, but you would not know because I put my tattoos where I can cover them. Thank God I didn't put that one in my neck that I wanted to do when I was 19. But unfortunately, we live in a society where there are certain expected behaviors from certain companies. That's their culture. When I was the HR director at OAH, sometimes we'll have speakers come in and talk to the judges. And I never forget, I saw a speaker came in, a white lady, she was covered in tattoos and she was wearing short sleeve. It was kind of like, to me, like, wow, you know, like, and here she are talking to these high level people. And I'm like, I bet I couldn't have done that. Like, I would have been looked at in a certain way if I walked into a building showing my tattoos. I sometimes will go back to New York and speak at one of the colleges I attend. And sometimes I will always wear a jacket where I can take off my jacket and show students that I am covered in tattoos. But I also think about my career and where I want to fit, because even though we should be accepted for who we are, unfortunately, that's not the real world. And to me, sometimes if we want to get to a higher level, we have to try to fit in, or sometimes we'll not move ahead. I'm not saying change the core of, because I am Jamaican, I party on the weekends, I wear short clothes, I do all that stuff that we do as Jamaicans, right? But when I come to the work environment, you would not know that side of me, because I fit into what's expected as an HR person. It's not, I'm not changing who I am at core. I still cuss, I still do everything. I wear short clothes, I show my tattoos when I'm not at work. But I don't think I'm changing who I am per se. I just, for that environment, for the 8 or 12 hours or whatever time I'm at work, I have to be this person. But after that, I can be Debbie, with the tattoos and the short clothes and all that stuff. Some people, I think what happened is, yes, we want people to accept us for who I am, but unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. And when I got hired at Morgan, because I'm not going to show up to any interview showing my tattoos. I'm going to show up in a pantsuit because I got tattoos on my leg. So it's after I'll start working, then they'll know I have tattoos. And I remember my boss said, I didn't know you have all those tattoos. And I said, well, you're not supposed to. That's the whole point. So one of the things that I try to warn students about, I said, look, especially if we're Black, we already have that strike. So you don't want to go with tattoos in your hand. You don't want tattoos in your neck. That's one of the things that will let people discriminate against you without even telling you. Because I don't have to tell you that I'm not going to hire you. But if you come with that impression where, oh my God, how is she going to be an executive with that snake in her neck? For people, especially if they don't like tattoos, and that has nothing really to do with race, but people just not thinking that you look professional enough. So every chance I get, I try to tell, especially college students, I say, look, you can still be wild and you can still be a professional. It's just do it in moderation. Because like I say to you, if I came on this interview, I could show you my hands, I have sleeves. I am fully tatted because I love tattoos, but you would not know. And because I do that in that way, and I talk to my teenage son about this, and he's tatted too, but none pass where they can't be covered with a shirt. Because like it or not, our Blackness is already a hindrance for us per se. Why are we going to give ourselves more hindrance by, again, going in with tattoos? So we have our race against us, we have our names against us, we have tattoos against us. So the things that we are able to control, and we should, because society is not going to fit us. We have to sometimes try to fit into where we want to be. Because as an HR person, I knew I had a uphill battle to climb. I already have a good name, so I wasn't worried about that. I have a mouth of me, and I'm very feisty, and and I speak up for things that I don't agree on and stuff like that. But I wanted to, when they look at me, they're not supposed to, they're going to still see an angry Black woman when I speak my mind. I don't care, as long as I'm not being disrespectful. I'm going to speak how I feel about an issue, or if I feel that there's some discrimination. But I want to be accepted, and I don't want anything to further hinder me. So I'm going to clean up and fix the things that I'm in control of. So that's where we have to, if we want to get ahead, sometimes we have to try to fit in. It doesn't mean that we have to change the core of who we are, because I haven't changed. I still cuss. I'm still Jamaican. All those things are still outside. When I get off here, I'm going to be on the phone, and I'm going to be talking in Jamaican. I'm going to be cussing, and I'm going to be vulgar as I want to be. I'm still being me. But for the time I'm on here, I'm going to be proper, as if I'm in the work environment. So that's the only thing that I say where that is concerned.
And can I just jump back in real quick? Because honestly, yes, I do agree with what Mr. Rand just said, definitely. I think also too, though, as we do what we need to do to get the position, do not allow, I think what we could focus in on as we move forward 2020 and beyond, and also too, we can't ignore about the impending election that's getting ready to take place and how that's going to impact us as a nation as well. But I think as we move on, just trying to make sure that we, and also too, I know it's not something that's going to happen overnight, depending upon the industry that you're in. But I think it's important that, like, for me, July 2019 Charles is not the same as September 2020 Charles when it comes to my work environment now. And I would say that code switching, yes, it's going to help us. But then I think also too, one of the things we need to focus on as well is just trying to make sure that we are still in our authentic self in our work environment. Because again, getting our colleagues to change the standard definition of professionalism, that I think that's one of the things that we need to work upon when it comes to the environments that we work in. So yes, I totally agree with Ms. Duran, and also too, I coach students about that as well, because we know that we don't run all of the companies and institutions that are out there. So yes.
Exactly. Just answer that question. I have a request from a colleague. If the panelist does not mind staying an extra 20 minutes, because this week
Renisha, you're going in and out. Renisha, you're going in and out a little bit.
I'm sorry. I had a comment from a colleague. They wanted to know if you could stay extra 20 minutes. They're really interested in this discussion.
All right, no problem.
Okay. So I'll ask this question. So I talked about the resume briefly on how I had to change my name on the resume. On the article, Whitening the Resume, that's what it's called, from the New York Times. If I could find my question again, that'd be great. Oh, the changing of cultural or ethnic names is discussed, and we briefly discussed that as well. Do you believe the applicant should alter the names to increase the likelihood of being hired, or do you think that one's name has any bearing on being hired or being taken seriously in the workplace? Because we've discussed the fact that
okay, so I've been a recruiter. I've done pretty much everything in HR. So I've seen a lot, and unfortunately for us, sometimes our names can hold us back. Whether we like it or not, it does. Because just like years ago, your social security could tell where you are from, the numbers, but they've changed it. They start changing that. All right. So when you have, because I've seen names like Strawberry, and honestly, I'm happy my sister saved my daughter, because I was hungry at the time and I was going to name my daughter Cookie, right? So sometimes as parents, when we're pregnant, and as mothers, when we're pregnant, our emotions is running all over the place, and we're not thinking about the future. We're thinking what we're feeling at the moment, right? Or I'm gonna name her off her dad, Davisha, or whatever. We're not thinking about 20 years from now. Unfortunately, when I get a resume, I'm looking at it, I can tell if it's a Black person just by the name. Years ago, we maybe wouldn't have known that, but now people are privy to the information that names matter. The names that you see as the executive director for so-and-so matter. You don't want to see Sharkeisha Davis. Sharkeisha may be brilliant, went to the top school, but her name. So what I've seen a lot of, especially African people do, or Asian people do, they transpose their name over into English, sounding simple names. It shouldn't, but it is, because I've Strawberry something like that. Now I look at Strawberry's resume. She's highly qualified for the job, but Jesus, that name, you know, and as a Black person, I'm not holding Strawberry back, but right away I start depicting a picture of what Strawberry looks like in my head. So sometimes it depends on where you want to go in your career. Most time, if you're in blue collar job, it doesn't matter. But if you want to go, especially to the corporate, government is not so bad. But if you want to go to corporate, that's predominantly white, your name matters because you're going to be discriminated on. Discrimination doesn't mean they have to say it. They don't have to tell you, I don't like you because of your name. You're like, ugh, right away. And before they even get to know you or even get you to an interview. So if you have a really Black sounding name, you can simply change it to. It depends on how much it means to you to get ahead. This is nothing that nobody's forcing you to do. But I'm just saying, if you feel that it's hindering you, and if you feel that, you know, I'm Jamal, everybody knows Jamal's Black, you know, right away. If you want to be taken by where you went to school, what your skills and experience are, and you're looking at a white company, if you feel that Jamar, let's say your middle name is Mark, use J, Mark, or use Mark. Thing that by the time we get to processing your paper, by the time they get to know you, they'll like, oh, he don't sound ghetto. You see what I'm saying? Because all I need is an opportunity in front of a interview panel. That's all I need to sell myself to you. So I'm kind of happy I don't have a Black sounding name, and I make sure my best when you're talking to me on the phone, like I really try to sound like this. So all I need to do is get in front of you, and so I can tell you, and I can tell you how good I am and why you should select me. But sometimes a name will block you from even getting that interview, believe it or not. And I hate to say it, but it's the truth, because I find myself to looking sideways at a person's name, and I'm Black. I'm not looking down on the person, but like right away, an image. If I see Sarah White, okay, one day I was recently looking at somebody's resume, and the person name is Wednesday, right? Guess what? Wednesday ain't Black. So that threw me off too. So I'm certain when she was being named Wednesday, maybe it was how her mother was feeling, but her name too could affect her, because it's a really unusual type of, and she was a white lady. She was Black as ever, but she was a white lady named Wednesday. So what I'm saying to you is not necessarily, you're not facing discrimination terms of race, but just like, because Black people will look at your resume and be like, oh my God, I could just imagine, you know. So if you find that you have a lot of negatives when you apply for stuff, and your middle name is not too bad, because some people just use their middle name. And then, because by the time they go and you sell yourself and they love you, the Jamal don't matter no more, because you already proved to them that, you know what, I'm well spoken, I'm articulate, and stuff. Then at that time you can say, you can call me Jamal, you know, because sometimes you have to try to find ways to go around the system. If both your names are Black, first and middle name are Black, and you've had problems, you can tweak it. Again, it's how badly you want to get to the top, unfortunately. So that's just my take on that.
I don't really have anything extra from what Mr. Rand said, because honestly, you're hearing, you know, the gospel truth from someone who is in HR, who's been in recruiting. But I think one thing we want to point out too with the names, because she made a very good, valid point that I think everybody should, you know, pay close attention to. So she had a candidate that was called, you know, their name was Wednesday. So just to let everybody know, I spent a year in HR, long time ago, never do it again, because of the environment that I was in. I was working at a plant. So that's a different type of a HR environment. But I remember applicant's application coming across my desk, and their name was Spontaneous. So just by, you know, so just listening to Wednesday, Spontaneous, even, so just listening to her example about seeing, okay, this is Wednesday, and my example about seeing Spontaneous, like looking at those names and like, oh man. So let's take it even further with some of our peers' names who are very, you know, very deep into our culture. We know a lot of times when it comes to some of the, some of our female peers, like a lot of the mothers like to take the father's name and the mother's name and combine it together. So, as Mr. Rand said, Sharkeisha, Tyranisha, all of that. So like how that affects, their candidacy. So, listening to Mr. Rand, who's been in this world and who is Black, let's just think about who else is in recruiting and HR and who is not Black and who couldn't understand, what those names mean and how they can just, again, going back to something that she said, a few minutes ago about appearance and how, people look at you, when they first see you. Let's think about that resume and an application, the same thing. So like, and again, another point that she made that's very valid, it doesn't have to be said, it's just, okay, I see that name. No, I don't see them working in my bank. Next. So yeah, that's how it can immediately happen. I tell students all the time about how a lot of times when it comes to the recruiting world, when they see your documents come across their desk, it goes into one or two piles. This pile, which is the pile they're gonna call back, and this pile, which is the one they're not calling back. So yeah.
And I have a question solely for HR. Okay. For HR, from an HR perspective, what are the steps if you do encounter discrimination in the workplace?
Well, my take is if you feel somebody is discriminating against you, because you could be wrong too. Mm-hmm. I always say, find some time to talk with the person about how you feel. It makes no sense you run around and talk to everybody else but the person. Because sometimes you could be off. Sometimes it could be a perception of what you think is discrimination. And sometimes you don't have the factors. Like, for example, let's say if a supervisor speaks with an employee, you might see the employee taking off and whatever, and you're like, she treats that employee better than me because where the supervisor is not supposed to tell anybody else what they discuss with that employee. You don't know what was set up, what's going on in that employee's life. And as you shouldn't know. So you're not going to know why is the person taking off, and it's not that she's treating better than you or whatever. You don't know her situation. So people tend to sometimes be wrong when they're talking about this. And especially, let's say the person is white and you're Black, and the supervisor is making the white person take off. The Black person is sometimes right away ready to say, oh, she's, and sometimes they don't know the underlying reason what's going on. So I always feel that I think that you should approach the person to talk about how you feel and be gracious. Don't do it when you're angry, because people will say, I'm not angry, I'm gonna do it today. No, let a day go by where you really calm and say, hey, can I talk to you real quick? It may not go your way still, but you still have to try that, because sometimes you will find that it's not what it appears to be, and sometimes you can be right. Like, for example, when I just started with the state, the majority of us that were hired in that batch were white, and a couple of us were Black. And we were watching a lot of the Black staff. We had master's degree, and we saw the younger white people being promoted, like just getting pushed up, and everybody was, I'm not a grumbler. Like I said, I am confrontational. So everybody would grumble. So then I picked a day to go in and talk to the director about what I saw. And I said, listen, I may be off, but this is what I see, and I don't think it's fair. Why are they being promoted and we're not being promoted, and we're more qualified than they are? She said, oh, it's not like that, and da, 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 da. But I know what I know, but I still gave her an opportunity to explain herself. She gave me an explanation that I still didn't like, but at least she knows how I feel. So she took some steps to push up the Blacks, even though but what I'm saying is, instead of, if you feel like you're being discriminated on, the person that you feel is, sometimes it's good to have a conversation. If you don't feel satisfied, then you can take the other steps. But I always feel that's the first approach, in talking to the person, because sometimes you can get an explanation which will clarify what you're thinking, and sometimes they will brush you off. It all depends. Sometimes they don't even want to hear you. And at that point, you can consider, it depends on how bad you think the discrimination is, then you can file an EEO complaint or take the other steps. But I always think it's best to talk first to show that you try to resolve the issue first.
Okay. Charles, do you have anything on that or?
Nope.
Okay. So I'm going to open the questions up in the question and answer period. So attendees, you can ask some questions in the Q&A portion. I do have one other question that you actually talked on, Mr. Rand, that was given from an attendee. Being often accused of making everything about race. If a person does feel like they are being overlooked for a position or being treated unfairly.
Wait, you went out a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Let me speed up. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can I hear better?
Yes.
Okay. Being often accused of making everything about race. If a person does feel that they're being overlooked for a position or being treated unfairly, what proof or evidence do they need to take with them?
A pattern, because because I've sit on the opposite side, it's not always about race, but sometimes people always take it there. It's not always about race. So let me give you an example. Morgan is predominantly Black. It doesn't mean that our staff is predominantly Black. It's a predominantly Black university, but we hire people based on their qualifications, not about their color or whatever. So I had a Middle Eastern guy that applied for a position. And he called me back and he said, why didn't anyone call me? Is it because I'm not Black? I kind of felt insulted when he said that, but I said to him, just because you meet the minimum qualifications for a job, it doesn't mean that you're going to get called, because some people have this perception, I meet the minimum qualifications. I have a bachelor's degree in the 3 years that they asked for. Well, you don't know what the other candidates have because you don't have privy to that information. So they may have way more qualifications than you, way more years of experience than you. You have met the minimum qualifications, but look at it. 50, 100 people apply for one position. We have to narrow it down to at least 5. You did not make the top 5. But again, here he was making it about race. This time the tables were turned. It wasn't about white and Black. It's a Black school. So he asked me because he wasn't Black, why he didn't get called. And I had to explain to him that you can't know that. And he says, I'm the best candidate. I've had candidates tell me that I am the best candidate. How do you know you're the best candidate? Do you get to see the other applicants' qualifications? You don't, so sometimes it's really not about race, but people always apply it to race. Sometimes the white candidate may just be better than you in terms of the qualification. Really too, sometimes the white candidate is prettier and she'll have a bachelor's and you have a master's. That's the reality. And they'll pick the white candidate. So that does happen. But sometimes there's not really much that you can do, or because it's about proving. And because you didn't get picked for the job or for the interview, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is about race. But even if it is, you have to be able to prove it. And sometimes that can prove difficult.
Okay. Do you have any questions from the attendees? I'm still looking for some questions.
When I read on the paper, it says something about students interested in building their businesses. Is there anyone that's starting out in a business? Because I also have a business outside of Morgan. I have an immigration consulting company, what you see on the back of my poster. So yeah. I deal with a lot of immigrants as well and stuff like that. And a lot of if you're looking to build your business, sometimes it's good to work first to kind of get an understanding of people and different environments to build your own business. Because now you're not relying on a paycheck when you're building your own business. You have to be able to deal with different kind of clientele, different personalities and stuff like that. And being in a workforce for a while can also give you some of that skill set that you need. And I often tell people this, no matter what skill, no matter if you were a cashier at ShopRite or whatever you do, every skill that you have done in your life takes you up to where you are. So I always tell people, do not leave certain, until you get to a certain level in your career where you can leave some things off. But if you have no experience and you're just graduating college, your experience at the, in retail matters, because it shows me that you've dealt with nasty customers. If you work at McDonald's, and you've been there for a while, it shows me that you know how, because I know how rude people, especially in the fast food industry, can be. So if you've worked there for a while, it shows me that you have the tolerance, you have good customer service, and it tells me things about you that just because you have a bachelor's degree, you may not want to put on your resume, because now I don't want anybody knew I work at McDonald's. But for me as a recruiter, if you have no real experience, and I see that you've been at a McDonald's or Target or whatever for a long time, that tells me something about you. So people leave that off and they have no experience. They don't want to put that because sometimes they're embarrassed to say they've worked there, but you are falling short. You're shortchanging yourself, because that speaks volumes, especially if you've been there for a while. All experience matter.
Definitely. There's another,
That's a great point. That really is such a great point. I think people need to, students need to realize that everything that they've done, whether it was, at their prospective institution that they're currently at, or at home, everything is a Lego block, to be totally honest, to getting them to their career. So like if, I'm 45 years old now. I'm 45 years old now, and I look back at the positions that I've had in previous, previous institutions and organizations. And I think at the time when you're in the job and you say to yourself, okay, why did I take this job? Is this going to lead me to where I'm supposed to go? But now that you look back on it, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's a reason why I was at that job. So like, I say to people, like that year I spent in HR at that plant, it was a meat processing plant. Like this is where they took cows and turned them into the beef patties that you see in the grocery store. So at that time I was like, why am I doing this job where I gotta come and deal with these smells? And then like the employees were, when I tell you some of the stories, I can write a book about some of the stories about employee behavior. I mean, cars get set on fire, and that's a lot. But you say to yourself, why did I work in this job? But now I look back and it's like, oh my gosh, I went through all of that because it prepared me for what I'm doing right now. If I did not do that, I would not know how to handle this situation that I'm in now. So yeah. So jobs are like Lego blocks. So yes.
True. But I think younger people, because I didn't know that in my young self either. Mm-hmm. So it takes people like us to tell them, because they think we just get here like this. No, we had to go through, we got to get fired. I had to learn to control my temper. I had to cuss people out, and, I don't need this job. And knowing full well I need this job. Like my daughter came home the other day. She said, Mom, I hate the people that I work with and I'm going to quit. Da, 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 da. I said, okay, fine. Nothing is wrong if you don't like the job, but leave respectfully. Because I said, if you walk out of that job, you've been there for a year and change. That's a lot of experience. You need that to go other places. If you walk out, she's like, I can't say I'm going to quit. And I'm like, don't say I didn't tell you. You will find it very difficult, because they're going to put a black mark against you. Now you're going to put your 2 weeks resignation in and leave respectfully. So that means if another job calls, so I try to teach people these things. You don't have to stay at a place that you don't like, but leave respectfully. Don't ever walk off a job, no matter what it is, whatever it is. So somebody told me that.
And to add to the puzzle piece that Ms. Duran just said, please do not think that when you leave a job, okay, once I close that door, I'm never going back through that door again. I'm gonna give you a great example. So I just shared with you all, I did HR for a year at a meat processing plant. I left the Department of Labor, a state job, to go and work at that processing plant because they were paying me at that time, because I'm in my 30s, that was a lot of money for me that they were throwing at me to come and work over there. And most of the time when people left working for the state, because they wanted to use up all of their leave, they just started calling out left and right, left and right. I never called out. I worked all the way to the end. And then I left and went to that HR job. Hated the job. I did, and never thought I would ever go back to working for the state. But my job at the state came back open again. And I ate a piece of humble pie and walked right into the office. Went to my former supervisor and said, hey, Mr. So-and-so, I want to come back. Hey, Charles, we want you to come back. So yes, I put in the application. Yes, I went through the interview process all over again, but the way they set it up, typically they pull people from another state office to interview you. Nope. The people that was in that particular office that knew me were my interviewers. I mean, it was just, so I went right back into that state job after being a year in the HR, thinking that when I left, I was never going back. Nope, went right back. So yes.
And you never know who, the main thing about, especially because Baltimore's so small, you don't know who knows who. So you might not like me and curse me out and leave, and the next job you interview at, my cousin or my best friend or a colleague is there, and they know that I am the person that runs over here. So whether you tell them or not, they're gonna say, hey, Deb, I have such and such here in my office. She said she worked, but she didn't report to you. I'm like, lies. Okay. So so that's what I'm saying to you. I've worked at a lot of jobs that I've hated the person, but I've never, it took me a while though. Don't get me wrong. I had to learn. I've not turned around and cursed anyone out. I actually, even if I don't like my supervisor, I turn around and I thank them. When I get another opportunity, I say, hey, thank you for giving me an opportunity when I needed it. I learned a lot here. Our relationship may not have been the greatest, but I thank you for considering me to begin with. That's how I leave. That's after I grew up. That's how I leave. That's how I leave, because I never had anybody to tell me these things that I'm saying now. So I teach it to as much people as I can. So that way, even if you still have some animosity towards me, that's on you. But you cannot say that I cursed you out and leave, because I don't know who I'm going to run into in that new place that you may know. So I always keep that in the back of my head. So never curse out your supervisor when you find, because I've had that with me where an employee left my employ and write a terrible exit thing. And then they go where they go, they don't like it, then they're trying to come back. No, I'm not going to take you back. If you just left, hey, go, because I like the person, so I would have taken the person back. But when you get malicious when you're leaving, they're not going to take you back. And because as you said, Charles, you were gracious when you were leaving, so that you could simply, hey, we've made that mistake, we've gone someplace we don't like, and we want to crawl back home. That's okay. So you always leave, even if you do not like or you cannot stand your supervisor, tell them thank you and go on about your business and go start your new career path, even if you don't intend on looking back. So that's one of the things that I want to part with everyone here.
Exactly. There was one more question in the chat. We answered the one on code switching earlier. Another question was for Charles. Is Chuck on the line? That was for your best friend, Miss Sienna Coulter.
Hi, Sienna.
But as a person of color, are there things that an individual new in the workplace or new to the workplace should be aware of when working in a predominantly white environment? How so you think employers view natural hairstyles in the workplace? So it's a two-part question. So the first question again is, are there things that an individual new to the workplace should be aware of when working in a predominantly white environment? That's the first one. Ooh, that was squinted. Check came out.
This is the tea party, right? Let me sip on my tea just real quick, but before I
sip that tea. No, listen. Y'all not trying. I got that coffee right here. All right, go ahead, Mr. Jennings.
Let's get back.
So, as I said to you all before I got to Princeton, I was in Chocolate City in my work environments. And honestly, I hardly ever had white supervisors. So I started off at Goodwill with a black male supervisor, went from Goodwill to the Department of Labor with a Black male supervisor. I'm gonna even take it even further with you all. I worked part-time at Macy's department store, and the Macy's that I was at was primarily Black, and the managers that I reported to were Black. So I was in a comfort zone until I got to Princeton. This is my first time working in an environment where I report to a white male. And again, I am 45. This is my first time reporting to a white male. This is my first time ever being in an environment where I'm the only Black male. So it was a big shift for me, especially coming from Tennessee State, where I'm used to loud music in the student center every day. I'm used to, the kids walking around not being cognizant of their environment and not knowing that they're, elders around them, and they're just talking like they normally would with their friends. I'm used to that. I'm used to, a homecoming. I'm used to, Greeks. So there's none of that at this Ivy League school. So it was an adjustment for me. There was no fried chicken Wednesdays in the cafeteria. There was none of that. So it was a big adjustment. So let me just, the minute I got to Princeton, it was like, okay, how can I adopt to this new world of mine? Because again, I've never been the only Black male in an office environment. So how was I able to, adjust to that? I would have to say, because it's not like Princeton is not devoid of Black people. We're here. We're just in several different offices. So I would have to say the blessing for me was getting involved in employee resource groups. So we have a People of Color network at Princeton. So attending those meetings, and then there's the network of African-American male administrators at Princeton. So connecting in both of those groups were helpful for me. But to answer the question about what do you do to get adjusted to that white environment, I'm gonna just be totally honest. It's just like, and we talked about this before with the code switching. I would have to say I really became a chameleon. So I just recall, you're talking to the son of a vocal Black male from deep South Carolina and a Southern Belle mother from deep Georgia, who, they raised us in an environment in Georgia where I saw a lot of things and then I encountered a lot of things. So yes, it wasn't like I was in environments where I did not deal with white people, because I did. So I had some white friends in my high school and I had some Black friends in my high school. And again, back to that code switching piece, how did I adapt to each one of them? I just, did what I did to actually interact with both. And I think when it came to this environment here at Princeton, where again, trying to, maneuver and whatnot, I just became a chameleon. I'm gonna just be totally honest. This was the first time ever being in an office party where we all, brought stuff and it was a potluck. This was the first time in years where I left an office party and I was hungry as I don't know what, because that stuff that they had on the,
oh gosh.
If it wasn't for me bringing the meat dish that I brought, I don't think we would have had meat. All this different veggie and pepper stuff. And I'm sitting there like, what is this? Somebody brought some meatballs and I think they had some type of sauce that was like, so yeah, it wasn't I know I'm doing a lot of rambling and talking and making jokes, but it was a huge adjustment for me. And it still is an adjustment, but I think what has happened for me now, especially with everything that happened with Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Christian Cooper, Breonna Taylor. So like when those incidents happened, that sparked a change in me where I was like, okay, let's start having some dialogues. So what has been different is it caused me to be more vocal and it caused me to make them more vocal in regards to, let's talk about the issues and how because I feel like when it comes to career services work, a lot of what we do is about social justice and changing the environment and the landscape of the employers that we work with. So we cannot be a service to our students if we're not advocating for better opportunities and better experiences for them. Okay, let me shut up so Mr. Rand can speak.
Well, what I want to say is it doesn't matter to me. You still have to adjust, especially if you go into because I first started at Monroe College, which is Blacks and Hispanics in New York, right? I was in my comfort zone. I could talk how I want to talk. I was loud. When I went to Fordham, I felt lost because I didn't see people like me. I felt like, can I make this? But what it did was made me work harder because I remember somebody asked me in my class, how do I pay for school? And my friend said, you should have cussed him out. That's none of his business. But a lot of the kids that go to Fordham are rich and white. So I said to him, look, I get scholarships, I use financial aid, da, 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 da. So I took the opportunity to educate him. So I think Fordham kind of got me ready for the white environment I was going to face in HR. So I've been already to Black schools and whatever. So I got that. So the white environment said, okay, this is what I could face, especially trying to get into HR. So as Mr. Jennings says, you have to become a chameleon. Nobody is their true selves, whether it's in a Black environment, Black workplace or a white place, because our true selves, some of us wouldn't be hired if they see how I could get. So we still make adjustments to fit the work environment. It's just, if it's a racially divided environment, especially if it's white, we have to work harder. We have to show why because we're looked on harder, believe it or not, when you're in a predominantly white, because it's like you have to work more than everybody else. You have to prove that you're better than everybody else because it's like an expectation. But if you're up for the challenge, because I love challenges. So if you want to see what I can do, I'll show you what I can do. So to me, if you're not a person who's willing to step up, it's not an environment for you, because the environment is not going to fit around you. You have to fit around the environment or not be in it. The one thing I don't like is people trying to change the Black hairstyles. I don't like that. And I will never support that, because that's a person's identity. Now, the person speaking a certain way, that's different. But if a woman wants to wear her natural hair to work, I don't see why that should be a problem. But unfortunately, it is. There's also, I face school discrimination in New York. I seen a job in the New York Times one day, and it says Ivy League applicants only. So there are even those kind of discriminations that people face. Or Hispanic, it's most jobs in New York City, Hispanics preferred. By default, they grow up bilingual, because a lot of New Yorkers are Puerto Ricans. So their parents are going to speak. So how do I compete with that? So sometimes we have to rise up and be more. Because if you live in New York City and you in the corporate world, they're looking for they prefer Hispanics, then go learn Spanish. Step out. That's why I say you have to work harder, unfortunately. So if you step into a white environment and you're Black, yes, you have to do the chameleon dance to a certain point, but I don't think you should change it, because I've never changed the core of who I am for any job. I modify my behavior, because that's what we don't change our personality. That's innate. My innate part, I cuss, I swear, I do all that stuff. That's my innate personality, but I modify my behavior to fit the environment that I work in, because you cannot be who you really are at work, whether it's a Black environment or a white environment. But when you go as a Black person in a white environment, you do have to do a tap dance. You have to, because you have to be better. You're looked on be more. For some reason, you're looked on harder. What is it that he's bringing to the table? What is she's, why they pick her? They're gonna always be that question. But if you know that you're going to work at optimal, there's no problem, because I've never had a problem, because I've always brought my A game, because I already knew I had to come better and do better and be better.
And can I just add to what Pastor Debbie just said, because she really was preaching when she said about when she talked about the process of that, you don't really change who you innately are. So let me just give you all a perfect example in regards to that. So I think for me, when I've been in work situations where I said, okay, maybe my assignment is over, because I also look at I look at jobs as assignments. When you've done what you're supposed to do in your assignment and you've completed it, now it's time to move to the next assignment. So this is when I knew that my assignment was over at a particular job. I'm not going to name which one, but I realized that my supervisor was trying to change me into the supervisor that she thought I should be for the people that she asked me to supervise. So she wanted me to be more like her when it came to disciplining employees or how I treated them. And I could not be that type of person. So there's a, everybody has their own leadership style, and how that works with the people that you are charged to supervise, then let it be. But I'm gonna give you an example about when I came to Princeton, because they had already some stuff in place about how they treated their employees and things of that nature. And I asked I'm a member of the senior team, and I asked one of my fellow senior team members, hey, do you all treat your employees for their birthday? And no, we don't typically do stuff like that here, and da-da-da-da-da. Because I wanted, the first birthday in my team was coming up. And I was like, hey, there's a cupcake shop downtown. Let me go get some cupcakes. Let's celebrate their birthday, da-da-da-da. Oh, Charles, I don't think that's a good idea for you to go get the cupcakes. That would cause da-da-da-da-da. So I sat there and I thought about that, and I was like, I guess I'm going to get in trouble because I'm a giver, and this is just who I am. And basically what I did, regardless of what they thought, I went and got cupcakes for my team, because that's just, I'm the type of person, like, I'm going to give my team kudos. I'm going to reward them. So yes, I went and got cupcakes for the person that celebrated their birthday in August. I went and got cupcakes for the person that celebrated their birthday in September. That's just what so yes, this may have been what you all were doing before I got here, but this is just who I am, either, love it or hate it. But my thing is, this is how I lead. This is how I inspire. This is how I motivate. So yeah, innately, just like you said, you can't, people can't change who you are. So yes.
And I wanted to add something on that. Believe it or not, sometimes you can face things from your own race. And to me, that hurts more than ever than if it's coming from somebody of another race. And what I wanted to add something that Charles said. One of my jobs in New York, when I went to lunch, the supervisor, we talked, so I knew her background based on what she shared. So she grew up in struggles. So generally, when you grew up in a struggle, you can identify, what it takes to be where you are. So I'm the kind of person, I don't believe in us and them. I believe in we are a team, because without your staff, you cannot shine, right? So you can't do the work by yourself. So I like to, as Charles said, give kudos. I sit with them I noticed there was a us and them mentality at this job. All the supervisors sat together and all the lower level staff sat together. I saw that. But I would go and pull a chair and sit. When I got my lunch, I go sit with my staff. And my supervisor actually called me. And again, this is a Black person. This is not a white person. This is a person who told me about struggles. And so I felt that she would understand why I am the way I am. So she called me in and she said, why do you sit with them? She said, they're never going to respect you. I said, respect is earned, like they're my staff and I want to sit with them. She said, why don't you sit with us? And I said, sometimes I'll sit over there too, but I am very stubborn. When you try to tell me to do something, I don't want to do it because you're kind of like compelling me to do it. So I purposely did not go over there. So I continued sitting. Maybe she didn't say anything. I would have grabbed my tray after I picked up my lunch and go sit with them. So I continued sitting with my staff, and she called me over again, called me in the office again about the same thing. I said, tell me, what am I doing wrong? This is my lunchtime, and what I do in my lunchtime is my business and who I sit with. But so I realized that sometimes Black folks can sometimes forget their way. When they achieve a certain status, they'll forget and they start acting like the opposite. They'll forget their way. So don't believe that you won't face discrimination from your own race. you know, sometimes it's not, their action is not about the color, but the things you're asking me to not sit with staff. And like, that's not even something you should even say to me. But that's what and you know what? That was my first highest paying job out of college, and I quit it. That's when I know I wasn't driven by money. That was my first highest paying job out of college. What? You couldn't tell me nothing. But I quit that job. And, you know, at the time, everybody said I was stupid, you know, but I couldn't. That's when I realized that it's who I am, and I can't, because you're not going to tell me where to sit, and not because my staff looked up to me. They were very nice to me. I have to be good to them to let them continue doing the work and not quit and stuff like that. So to me, I feel more pain when someone of color acts like that. If it was a white person, I think I would expect it and I would have like brushed it off as nothing, but it hurt me to my heart that a person of color was telling me to do this.
So can I amen one more time to Pastor
Yes.
Duran's sermon? So as I was telling you all earlier about the supervisor that I had that was trying to change who I was as a leader, that was a Black female. Yes. And I got so bothered by that because honestly, who I was supervising at the time were two Black individuals in the office. And for her to dictate to me how I should be, you know, leading them and interacting with them, again, going back to what Pastor Duran just said, when it came to lunchtime, what my supervisor would do would go into her office and close the door, whereas I would go into the break room and sit with the rest of the team or sit with the students and, you know, and interact with them. So the difference, because I am a relationship builder, and I think that's where we differed. She was a process implementer, and I was a relationship builder. So that's where we didn't connect, because my thing was, in order for the work and the process to get done, I got to build the relationships with the people so we can carry it out. Her thing was, this is what we're going to do it. Okay, but you got to motivate them to do it. So that's where we differed. So yeah, like I totally get it where she says like, your people can be one of the biggest disappointers when it comes to them giving you directives and about how they're trying to change you. Because honestly, really and truly for me, you can read all the books in the world about leadership and how to do this and how to do that. But we got to remember, it's the people. And see, what I love about the relationship that I have now with the supervisor that I have, who is a white male, is he's about the book as well. He's about effectiveness and efficiency. So I had to kind of shift things with him and show him, okay, I hear you loud and clear about effectiveness and efficiency, but if I don't work towards the inspirational and motivational part of my team, I can't get them to be effective and efficient. So I got to work with that first in order to get them to where you need it. So like where we are now is we're in a great space, to the point where I was able to tell him, hey, I'm just going to say this. This is what happened in my evaluation discussion. I'm just going to say this. As a Black man, I don't think you all set me up for success. When I first got here, I pointed out everything that they did wrong. And he sat there and listened to it with humility and said, okay, I got to give you rock star kudos for this, because in a normal situation, if somebody else was in that role, I can totally understand if they would have told us to, excuse my French, kiss my ass and left. And honestly, that's what he said. And yes, there are times where I felt like that, but just like Pastor Duran was saying earlier, we got to bring our A game all the time. And I brought it, and I dealt with every issue. I mean,
you brought some good points though. Yes, most definitely.
We got some preachers in the house. Everyone is saying preach from all ends. So we're going to wrap this discussion up. I want to first thank you both for being a part of this dynamic discussion. I know this is probably not going to be the first and not going to be the last either, because this is an ongoing conversation. And the more that we are constantly having these constant meetings. I know me and Charles have been in a whole lot of them since March, and they're not going to end. But I'm glad the conversation is being discussed even more. And I definitely want to thank you too, Ms. Duran, and also Mr. Jennings, for taking some time off of your schedule to speak on this discussion about working while Black and what are we to do, what are the students to do, and get some more insight. So thank you all. I do have some resources that I will put in the chat. I'm going to share my screen again.
And can I add a closing comment before I go?
Yes, please do. Yes.
One thing that I think people do when you're new in a job, don't believe that because somebody is Black, you can talk to them Black. Don't make an assumption. Don't come and start talking about Black people because you don't know this person. You don't know if they're whitewashed per se. You don't know. So before you start making Black comments because the person is Black, to me, I think you need to get to know the people you're around before you start gossiping, before you start making comments, before you start criticizing. And I think a lot of people sometimes, because you don't know if the person sees the views as you. That's why I don't discuss politics and religion in the workplace. So what I'm saying, don't make the assumption because somebody looks like you that they think like you.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Exactly.
I made that mistake. Amen.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you again. Here are some resources. I'll put the links in the chat to check out. Fortune magazine had a Working While Black, had actually stories from Black corporate America, from real people and what their experiences were, talking about what microaggressions really are. You can hear them, you can see that it's everything, and how to really deal with certain microaggressions. Also the whitening the resume conversation on New York Times. My lovely supervisor, Messina Coulter, did a interview with Vault about the Black Lives Matter movement at Morgan. So, or not even at Morgan, but just her take on it. And definitely check that out. And also some other tips with dealing with discrimination for employees.
Okay, no problem. Thank
So
you. And I want
thank
to
you,
check out, I didn't get a chance to see the whitening in the resume, so I'm going to take a read.
Sounds good. Thank you all for participating. Again, my name is Bernice Smith from Career Services. Please see your advisor for students. Here are overview of services of things we provide here. Here's our lovely team, myself, Ms. Bernice Smith, Amban Anjay for the STEAM H group here, and Mr. Craig Bullock for business, entrepreneurship, and also community health and policy. We're all sharing the arts and humanities portion, also the College of Liberal Arts as well. So reach out to your career specialist for more guidance, and so we can help you on your career journey. Okay. Thank you all again. And we'll definitely, this is a recorded session, so we'll definitely see you all again. And our next session will be on BOB, being your own boss. And that'll happen next Tuesday. So definitely have to see and participate in that. So thank you all and have a great one.
Thank you, Ms.